Hi, I'm Emily Freeling with Fredericksburg Parent and Family Magazine. We are here today with Danielle Ripperton, President and CEO of the Children's Museum of Richmond, which many of you know as Seymour. Like many businesses, Seymour had to close its doors in March and remains closed. And in early June, the museum announced that its Fredericksburg Museum, which is one of 4 locations that Seymour runs, would not be reopening. Danielle, thank you so much for being here with us today. And since this is a Fredericksburg audience, could we talk a little bit about the decision to close Fredericksburg and how that was made?
Absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, we have to go back to March 14th. So as you mentioned, the museum closed in mid-March. And when we closed March 14th, I think maybe it was a little too hopeful, but we were really thinking it was going to be for 2 weeks. And then as we got to the end of the 2 weeks, it was very clear that it was going to be through the spring break periods for all the school systems, and it was going to be a month. And so we had started to make hard decisions, and we're continuing to make hard decisions in order to make sure that the museum can be viable as an entire organization. And it got to the point that we realized that our second biggest expense outside of the people that we hire is our facilities. And so we had to look very carefully at our lease terms, and we had to look at the viability of the locations. And I am so sorry that Fredericksburg, we had to announce the closure because we did not anticipate that going into this pandemic. And it has been, it's rocked our world, to say the least.
Um, the Fredericksburg Museum branch opened in 2014. For many years before that, a local group of women had worked to build up support in the community for a children's museum organization. And, we had many local donors, including the lead gift of $200,000 made by the Quarles family. And many families participated in fundraisers over the years. What would you say? Is it hard to end that kind of a partnership?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't say how grateful that we are for all of the incredible families that really supported the Children's Museum before the Children's Museum of Richmond came to Fredericksburg, but also the 6 years that we had at the Children's Museum. It was an excellent 6 years, and we are so grateful that we were able to be a part of the community in such an in-depth way for that period of time. And we're so sorry. But for the overall viability of the organization and being able to serve children and families in Central Virginia for the long term, that's why we had to make the decision that we made.
If we have families in our community and we don't know right now when children's museums anywhere in our country will be open again, but if we have families in our community who are unable to travel to Richmond to use your facilities, should they contact you? Is there anything they can do about their membership if they don't expect to be able to use it?
Sure. We've been trying to communicate with families in a more personal way. And so with membership extensions, one of the things that we had done just before coronavirus even hit was we joined the ACM reciprocal network, which makes it possible for families with Children's Museum of Richmond memberships to be able to utilize those at other ACM membership locations that are nationwide.
Oh,
And there are others in Virginia. So we're glad that we had already put that ball forward so that it was rolling before coronavirus struck. So the membership extensions will be able to be utilized not only at the other locations for the Children's Museum of Richmond, but also within the ACM reciprocal network. So what we would really do is if people have specific questions on their membership, what's best always is to reach out to our membership coordinator, and that email address is membership@childrensmuseumofrichmond.org.
What are you seeing right now in terms of what the experience at a children's museum will look like going forward as we get beyond this pandemic?
It's been actually fascinating to be a part of the Association of Children's Museums. And one of the things that they did for the entire group early on was, I think it was late March, they put us in touch with a video conference with the executive director of the Hong Kong Children's Museum. And they were obviously further along in the pandemic than we were at that time. We were still just getting into it and understanding what was going to be hitting the United States. And she was talking about how they were approaching reentry. And I took probably 2 pages of notes on what she was saying in terms of the things that they were doing as families were being able to come back. A lot of the museums are implementing what we are, which is time ticket entry.
Mhm.
We're actually going to have these time ticket times so that we can shut down the museum in between. So in addition to the surface cleaning that we'll do throughout the time that families are playing, then we'll shut down and do a deep clean, then reopen for another session. And that's pretty common in the children's museums and science centers across the United States. Time ticket is very common. I would venture to say the vast majority are going to be going to that type of a system so that they can control capacity, and also so that they can be sure to be clean and safe as families are coming back into the museum spaces.
A lot of kids have been at home now for 3 months or more. They haven't had school. They may not have had their normal daycare. How important, as we come out of this, will those learning through play experiences be?
I think they're always critical, and they're going to continue to be critical. What we know as parents is that children are very resilient and they adapt very quickly. So they've adapted quickly to what it's like to be sheltering in place for a period of time. They're going to adapt quickly as the world begins to open back up and what some of the new protocols are going to be. It's been interesting as our team has especially looked at the downtown location. We've been looking at the ways that a new town square functions. So how does the grocery store function now when you actually go to, whether it's Wegmans or any other grocery store? And we've modeled what it looks like in our grocery store to what it looks like at the grocery store if you were to go in real life to go with your parents for produce. So you're going to have less registers that are open. You have less items on the shelf. And I think children will start to see those clues everywhere, and it begins to normalize for them, and it makes them feel comforted to know that they're seeing similar things all around, regardless if it's them learning through play or learning through the experiences that they're going to be facing as they're coming back out into the world after the stay-at-home order.
Is there any way that parents at home can think like a children's museum and maybe make their environment a little more fun or just engaging for their children?
Absolutely. And I will say, parenting's a roller coaster, and especially during the pandemic, it's been quite an up and downhill roller coaster in terms of both time and how you're feeling at any given moment. And it's interesting. So, my girls a couple of weeks ago were having a moment, as parents, our kids are having moments at various times. And my husband and I are both trying to work from home. And it just happened that very early that same morning, we had, I'd watched with my youngest one of the Instagram shows that the Children's Museum had done about Jackson Pollock painting. And so as they were having that moment mid-afternoon, and you can tell when tensions are rising, the girls just needed an outlet. And so we took our bucket of paint where we keep our craft supplies, and we took it outside and found some cardboard that we were getting ready to recycle, put some music on, and they just were throwing paint like Jackson Pollock. And it was the release that they needed as kids. It was the level setting that we all needed as the family to de-escalate the situation. And I think that it's just going to be critical as parents to realize that there are moments that we're going to have to breathe and find our inner calm so that we can spread that to our kids. And there's going to be moments that we have to reach out to whatever resources that we have in order to help our kids navigate through the emotions of all of this.
Well, Danielle, that's very helpful advice, and we really appreciate your time today being with us. Is there anything else you would say to the Fredericksburg community as we close this out?
I would say thank you. Thank you all so much for having the Children's Museum as a deep part of the community for 6 years. We are so grateful. We look forward to seeing Fredericksburg families when we're able to reopen. And just stay safe and stay healthy and keep learning through play.